Hello.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I am well as well. Thank you. Happy holidays to you. Mhm.
As to you, thank you. It's been kind of crazy.
Has it?
Yeah, yeah.
Crazy in a good way or what?
Crazy in that is just is nonstop, nonstop, just past couple of weeks, just got to do this, go here, these people, this isn't happening. Okay, rearrange this, just, thing to thing to thing to thing. So that kind of crazy. I mean, beautiful. I got to spend time with family. I've had family here in town and house guests and events and everyone going to the movies and everyone being at this house and being at this house. And so I'm grateful, especially since, our parents are getting older and, you just really cherish these times.
Yeah.
But it doesn't, there's also like a toll. Like I was like,
Yeah.
yeah,
It's called
yeah,
energy.
that's a lot of energy. So, but
Yeah.
all good. How about you?
I'm good. I actually, for the first time since the pandemic began, I got COVID. And the actual um, experience of the COVID has not been all that terrible. It's been quite mild, but uh, I got infected. And then, I took it to my sister's house where we caregive for my mom, who's 91. My mom didn't get it, thank goodness, but my
Oh
sister
wow.
did. Yeah. So,
Oh, it's
uh,
a lot.
and
Yeah.
then, yeah, so we've been trading it back and forth. It's just been crazy.
Oh goodness.
But I am so happy to be here, and I am looking forward to seeing where you are, seeing, what your thoughts are about going forward in your life.
Right.
Definitely am interested in any any awarenesses that you might have, or questions, or even challenges that you might have um, since we've started working together.
hmm So, I was feeling a few days ago kind of frustrated, like just disappointed because haven't had the time or taken the time just in the craziness of the holidays to really be able to focus on the things that we've been talking about and really spending that intentional time with myself. So I was like, oh my gosh, I haven't, Tina and I are meeting and I haven't even been able to do just as much work as I would like to do.
Mhm.
And I've had to, I literally had to, process that with myself and figure that out and come to terms with, these couple of weeks in the year that are so important to so many people in my life. I was like, I had to accept that I am choosing to prioritize that. Like that's a choice. Like I'm choosing to prioritize that right now, right now in this holiday season. And and that's okay. That's a
Mhm.
choice
Mhm.
that
Mhm.
you're making. And just, again, just the awareness of that, like just the awareness of, but I'm also, like frustrated, like I feel like I'm behind. But I'm better with that now. And I did, take the past couple of days just to make sure I just got some time with myself and some time just to kind of just reset everything. And I did have yeah, some new things come to mind. In the time that we've been working together, it's just been this month. And I'm not sure. I wanted to ask you too, like what would be normal to like in that period of time sort of have figured out if you're trying to figure out like a new path and purpose in life.
Yeah,
What's normal to accomplish in a few weeks?
yeah. So it's a great question. And a lot of what you have said gives me an opportunity to not just answer that question, but to sort of, focus in on what we human beings tend to do and how we tend to approach the idea of self-care,
Mm,
right? Self-care absolutely requires our time and it requires our focus. If you were talking about physical fitness, that would be so obvious, right? Because with physical fitness, you know when you are dedicating time to yourself or not because
mm,
you are doing something that very specifically aligns with the idea of physical fitness, right? You're getting up and you're going to a gym or you have a trainer coming in or you are taking that walk or whatever. It's really clear.
right.
When it comes to inner fitness and that inner self-care,
Mm,
it it is a misnomer. It's a mistake to think that you have to stop and spend time with yourself. Yes, that is a important component because you with your journal, you with your thoughts, you just giving yourself the opportunity to breathe.
gosh, yeah.
Yeah, all of those things are very much things that require or are better served with you taking time with yourself.
Hmm.
But inner care and inner fitness is really about you becoming aware of yourself in action.
Mm,
What are the things you default to? What what's the thinking? What's the habit? Just from your share, I'd like to ask you if there is a habit of putting Nico on the back burner. And I'm going to get to me. I'm going to get to the things that are important to me. I'm going to get to those things. But right this moment, this thing here is important. So I'm going to ask that question.
hmm.
Is that a habit for you?
I would say as of recent years, yes. I don't really think of myself holistically that way, but the way life has been in the past few years,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. Well, is what's needs to be acknowledged, meaning seen, is it only takes a habit that long to develop,
Mm,
right? And I think that it's important for us to be aware of habits, how quickly they form, and then how intelligent they are. Because once a habit has instituted itself into our, lives,
mm,
that habit, you can think of it as having its own intelligence.
wow.
And that habit now wants to have time and space to live. So when we stop our routines, whatever they are, if we don't tend to them within a with a level of frequency and intentionality, they cannot maintain themselves. And then something else is going to come in and become the new habit.
Yeah.
So the new habit is now not giving Nico the time she needs. And then there are all of these very, I'm going to use the word seemingly legitimate reasons why Nico can't give herself the time she needs. You know, there's work, there's family, there's all of these things that matter to you.
Yeah.
And prioritizing those things seems responsible. And so that narrative begins to win. And Nico is doing all of these things, being very busy, and she's not giving herself the time she needs.
Mhm.
So, and that's the case with everyone.
Yeah.
If we aren't paying attention, my daddy used to always say, if you're not thinking for yourself, then somebody's going to be thinking for you. Well, when it comes to consciousness, if we aren't thinking for ourselves, if we aren't intentionally, living our lives, then the habit of being human is going to do that for us.
Yeah.
It just is. And we don't have to judge it, but that's the dance.
Hmm.
So I will tell you now, however you choose to confront the habit of putting Nico on the side, you are going to have to do a level of, interruption of this habit that has formed that keeps legitimately saying you'll get to yourself later.
Yeah.
So you're going to have to do something to help yourself interrupt this pattern that has established itself with its own intelligence and will endeavor to operate without your consent.
That makes sense. I already know, a couple of things that I can do and will do. Um, but yeah, I also know like just the struggle, like of just, at times like if I'm, really taking care of myself and if I'm really giving myself what I need, I'll do this thing. But yeah, then the things that are like sort of pulling at you where you really want to show up and you really want to be present and you really
Who,
want,
who, who really wants to show up? Who really wants to be present?
I do.
Yeah, and it's important to own it, right? When we use the third person and talk about what you want to do,
Oh, okay.
we don't actually get to feel and be present with where we are and what we are thinking and what we are doing.
That's so interesting. I just had someone just mentioned that 2 days ago, about using the term you in sort of when you're talking about
So,
yourself or you're talking about something, someone specific or yeah. Um, I want to show up. Yeah, and I feel the pull. I feel, that other people want me to show up, and so I want to provide that for them. And yeah, and sometimes it is at the expense of myself,
yeah,
and I need to navigate that
yeah,
better. Hmm.
yeah, yeah. I think we've talked briefly about the three selves, the surviving self, the thriving self, and the infinite self. And, when all else fails and you're not really sure um, where you are or what you're feeling or why you're doing the things that you're doing, you can take a moment and just ask yourself the simple question. Is this a surviving self choice, a thriving self choice, or an infinite self choice?
Mm.
And in in the scenario that you just painted, you said that there are people in your life that you care about, and they need these things from you, and you want to show up for them.
Mhm.
Something like that, right? Said something like that. And so I get curious about which part of you wants to show up for them.
Mm. I I feel like I probably need to think about that for a while. I mean, I want to say that it is a thriving, these are thriving self choices. And that's the first thing that's coming up. But I feel like I need to, go a little bit deeper.
It's worth thinking
Yeah.
about. We're going to take and put you and your real-time experience to the side and just use the question as an exercise or a way of exploring which self is present.
Yeah.
Whenever we are doing something because people expected of us, even needed from us,
Mhm.
if we are responding from needing to prove that we are a good person or making sure that people see us in a certain light, we actually say, if you're proving, manipulating, blaming, attacking, projecting, you are being driven by the surviving self. Because the ultimate aim of the surviving self is to survive. And so that means the surviving self might be trying to survive your idea of it. The
Mm.
surviving self might be trying to survive, you know, not just how it's seen, but um, the idea of it as being this all capable and generous and, loving person,
Yeah.
which you might be. But if we have become so attached to these ideas about ourselves that they don't allow us to operate freely, meaning with choice, then when we're not at choice, we are being manipulated or are manipulating. And so being able to see that is important
Yeah.
because the authentic self is a self who is aware of what they're doing and why, even if the choice winds up being the same. It's not the same when you're conscious of what you're doing.
Mhm.
You can't be used by it unconsciously if you are aware. Okay, so this is my habit of needing to prove that I'm Superwoman, or
Mhm.
this is my habit of needing. The more you see how you are operating in the world, the more experience and data you have for deciding, is this the person that you want to be? Is this how you want to continue living in the world, living inside of yourself?
Right. And so what does that, same scenario look like, feel like if it's, operating from your thriving self?
So it's a great question. So a simple way to identify the difference between surviving and thriving is choice, and growth, right? The thriving self is always looking to grow and expand.
Yeah.
So the thriving self isn't dictated to by habit. It is willing to challenge the habits that have ingrained themselves. It is looking and curious about why we do what we do without any judgment, right? But just like, oh, you said you're fine. Did you say you're fine because you're fine, or is that a habit?
Mm-hmm.
The thriving self is willing to be curious about that because that investigation is always going to allow more room for you to expand.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas the surviving self is going to be very, very happy with you not being curious and not challenging anything, and let's just do it the way we've done it before because that's what works. I know you're not happy, but this isn't about being happy. When it comes to the surviving self literally doesn't know anything about our happiness, nor does it care.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not mean spirited, right? It's not like there's this dark shadow inside of us working against us. No. If you think about any animal in the wild, or just think about yourself, those moments when you have literally experienced a physiological rush of fear and you have been propelled into fight, flight, or freeze. When you are in fight, flight, or freeze, you can't think about being happy. You are thinking about surviving this moment.
Yeah.
And so that's a really great thing to remember about the surviving self, even if we're not highly triggered. The
Mm-hmm.
surviving self is looking for its safety always. And that safety can, in that we are habitual creatures, that safety oftentimes is found in habitual behavior that no longer serves us.
But what
But we
about
know and understand it. I'm sorry, go ahead.
so let's see if I can express this properly. Like what about a scenario where you are wanting and trying to grow into a new area or in a new way, but of course you're experiencing a lot of resistance. Not of course, but you are experiencing resistance because it's something new and it's new territory and it's unfamiliar, and you desire to grow in this way, but it's challenging. And so you fight through it and then you do it. And it's like, that was great. That was amazing. I did it. But I mean, that would be the thriving self, kind of
Yeah,
battling with the surviving self, right? Like,
yeah, because you said key words. You are wanting to grow, so you know that there's some level of constraint there,
mhm,
right? We understand that where we are is smaller than where we can be. It's less satisfying than where we can be. So that's a level of awareness that the surviving self is not going to be aware of.
mhm,
I mean, you could chunk yourself down into the tiniest little hole and the surviving self would be just fine because that space is understood. We know how to navigate this. We just keep walking around and around and around.
mhm,
And that's just what we do. But only if you have a interest or an
And
idea of yourself outside of that
mhm,
can you grow. So the moment that something enters your heart that is pulling you beyond the old habit, you are in the territory of the thriving self.
mhm.
Thriving self pulls us forward.
And they can feel uncomfortable and you
It's,
feeling
it's going to feel uncomfortable. It's not just that it can, it's going to. I mean, if you do something as safe and as simple as walk the exact same route, you know, in your neighborhood every single day. And one day you're not home at 4 o'clock when you normally walk, and you have to walk your 10-minute or 20-minute walk to get your exercise in, and you do that in an area that is foreign to you, there will be anxiety. There will be uncertainty. There will be, a level of fear because it's so unknown. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's the way we are built.
mhm,
But the moment you work with that discomfort, then that discomfort expands. It expands. So it's not this small. Now it's this small. And the more you intentionally expand your life, the circle of your comfort zone keeps expanding. And of course, because everything is a habit, if you turn expanding into a habit, then the experience of discomfort changes.
mhm.
Because now you're used to having that little bit of resistance
Right.
that gives way to a larger you. So it's like, okay, let's ride the ride. Let's go to the amusement park and get on the roller coaster
Right. The
and
thrill.
ride the ride. Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. So I always love sharing this statistic. It says that, and I probably have shared it with you before, but it bears repeating. Our brains think somewhere between 12,000 and 60,000 thoughts a day. Of that thinking, 80% is negative. 95% is repetitive.
Yeah.
Now, that doesn't make us bad, unhappy people. What it says is that the surviving self, which has had millions of years of development within our nervous system, it's the oldest part of the brain. It's very ingrained. And what I find exciting is that, 80% might be negative and 95% might be repetitive. But the thriving self and the infinite self are so powerful that the space that it can play in, that 20% and that 5%, is so impactful.
Yeah.
It
I
can literally change our lives. And so, whenever you experience yourself showing up in a surviving self way, that is not cause for self-attack. In fact, nothing is cause for self-attack.
Hmm.
That's what the thriving and infinite self wants
Okay.
us to know.
Yeah.
So let me maybe play a little game or an exercise with you real quickly to just bring home the point that the infinite self, the infinite self is that it's the water that the fish swim in.
Mm.
The infinite self is the life that is breathing us. You hear that? The infinite self is the only reason that we exist. And it's really difficult to sort of separate white from rice, right?
Mm.
It's difficult to see where the rice starts and the white stops. That's how intertwined the infinite is with who we are.
Mm.
And so, with that said, I'm going to ask you to think of something that you might judge yourself for, or a way that you speak harshly to yourself.
Um, yeah, I think just exactly what we've been talking about since our first conversation of just not having not having it figured out and yeah, like not feeling, I don't want to say directionless because I don't feel directionless, but just not having something to dive into and really feel um impactful with, and um it makes me feel like I'm wasting time. And
Yeah, I understand. I understand. So, with that self-judgment, you get to ask yourself, and how is that true or possible within the infinite self?
yeah,
Because that's who you are,
it's not possible in that. Yeah. Yeah.
right? So if that's not who you are, I mean, if that's not possible within the infinite self, then what you get to do is to use the thriving self and be curious about how you express differently,
Mm.
how you become more aligned. When you use the thriving self to get curious, you are expanding the mindset of the surviving self
Mhm.
that wants to keep you small and locked in. And in this moment, I'm going to ask you, might it be possible that feeling like you're not doing enough and that you're playing small, even if there is some part of you that needs you to feel that to pull you forward, that's a possibility, right? But if you do it, if you have that thought and those concerns as an unconscious habit of making Nico wrong and not good enough and not capable enough,
Like
Then
that.
you've just focused. Well, and you've just fulfilled everything that we've said. That's part of that 80% negative, 95% repetitive. That's the tendency of a habit to perpetuate itself. That's, the resistance to change. All of that
Mhm.
happens in the habit of how we talk to ourselves.
Yeah. And I just, in you saying that, I just, thought of like an entirely different way to think about that, like to think about and, using, excitement. Like it's
Yes.
exciting to be on a journey of discovery and, you know,
Yes.
figuring out how I can, you know, be used and used my gifts. And it's an exciting journey of discovery. Um,
That
as
is so brilliant. That is so brilliant.
yeah.
It's so brilliant because excitement is absolutely a thriving self characteristic, right? And trait. So, a great default question that supports excitement is, okay, so what can this teach me? What can this teach me? Where can this take me? What can I discover?
Mm.
How can I use this for my good?
So when you say, what can this teach me? What is this? What specifically are we talking about?
So in your example, you were saying that you could use a moment, use your frustration with feeling like you're not, progressing or that you're standing still, instead of seeing it from that mindset or perspective, you can shift and get excited about, okay, so this means and we can fill in the blank, so this is an opportunity to grow. So how do I grow beyond this? So how can I use this habit, the habit of seeing this as a problem? How
Mm.
can I use the habit of seeing this as a problem and turn it into, life enhancing awareness? Turn it into a path that orders my next step.
Mhm.
What's inside of this habit that is a gift? Now you're engaging with the habit in a completely different way. You are engaging with the details from a thriving self mindset
Mhm.
versus engaging with the details from a surviving self mindset, which leaves you judging yourself, speaking to yourself harshly and poorly, seeing yourself as failing and less than, etc., etc.
And it seems like it's like just a, a big part of it is the awareness of that messaging that's running. Because if I'm conscious of it, then I know like I need to reframe that. Like if I'm conscious, like having this conversation with you, when you brought attention to it, I'm like, oh yeah, I can just reframe that and change my perspective on what the situation is. It's just that script is just running rampantly, like, and you know, um, yeah, trying to retrain that.
And I love what you've just said because you actually have identified within that process. Now, initially, you said the most important thing is awareness that you're doing that.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to suggests, and yeah, that awareness is important,
Okay.
but the most important
Mm-hmm.
is the interruption, right? You can be aware of something all day long,
So let it go.
but if you don't interrupt
Yeah.
the habit, the pattern, then nothing will change.
Very good point. Yes.
So the awareness is crucial, but the interruption is critical.
Right. That makes perfect sense. Yeah.
Right?
And I in so not in this aspect of my life, because this is again the one that I'm bringing to you, like I need help with, but in other aspects of my life, when I'm more familiar with some of the negative feedback loop that's going on, and I will tell myself like stop, like I will just like
Yes.
verbally state, I
Yes.
know to stop things in their tracks. I don't think I ever thought of this particular situation with me, trying to figure my life out or what I'm doing or what my purpose is again. I didn't see it in the same way. I didn't even think to tell it to stop. I'm trying to find the answer as opposed to like saying, wait a minute, this isn't how to get there.
Well, I love that. I love that because it brings another game to mind.
Mm.
Okay. So I'm going to invite you to just say, let's say, I'm going to ask you to say it just one time, and we'll see where it goes. Okay. I'm going to ask you to repeat what you've said a couple of times, not just today, but in each session.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So you have said, I'm trying to figure my life out.
I'm trying to figure my life out.
So say that 5 times.
I'm trying to figure my life out. 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 I'm trying to figure my life out.
And why?
And because I want to feel like I am using my potential and adding value.
So when you say, and this is you checking in with yourself, I'm going to invite you to say the same sentence from a place of feeling like you're not using your potential and life is passing you by. So I'm trying to figure my life out. Say it from that mindset.
I'm trying to figure my life out.
And say it from the mindset of understanding that it's a process that allows you and requires curiosity so that you can move forward.
I'm trying to figure my life out.
So go back to the surviving self way of saying it. And inside of yourself, how often are you saying it from the surviving self mindset?
Um, Most of the time, a very large majority of the time. Yeah.
Same words, but what is happening underneath is creating the habit.
Mhm.
It's creating your relationship with yourself and
Yeah.
the universe. So let's take that same sentence and say it 3 times, not in rote, but 3 times
Mhm.
from the surviving self mindset of curiosity, etc.
The thriving self.
Yes, the thriving self.
Okay. I'm trying to figure my life out. I'm trying to figure my life out. I'm trying to figure my life out.
And in that, is there any awareness or any aha
I mean, it just, oh, sorry, go ahead.
or feeling that comes up?
I mean, it is a completely different feeling in my body. Like, just, I mean, when I say it from the surviving self, I mean, I definitely, I know in my body where I feel it, it's lower. It feels like a pulling. It feels like a pulling. And even when I'm shifting and going into, okay, the mindset of the thriving self, just even getting into that mindset and remembering what that is. And like, it's instant levity. I feel lifted and I can feel it's higher in my body and I can feel just possibility. Like,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah. So here's a question for you. When you say it from the thriving self, it sounds to me, and I'm checking in with you, it
Mhm.
sounds to me like it's okay.
It's more than okay. It's like, wow, like there's so much open to me. I can see what we come up with. Like yes, yeah, it is okay. It's more than
Yeah.
okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so let's try one other thing.
Wow. That's so amazing.
Let's try one other thing. Say that same statement. I'm trying to figure my life out from the infinite self.
Mm. I'm trying to figure my life out. Mm. It's completely different too. Aw, yeah. Hmm. And that felt like it just almost felt like, I don't know, mother nurturing, like,
Like it's all good.
oh
It's
yeah.
all good, baby. You're just fine. You are just fine.
Oh,
You are just doing exactly what you need to do in this moment. I got you.
that's
It's all good.
mm-hmm,
All just fine. Because the infinite self knows that there's no struggle.
mm-hmm. Yeah.
Everything you need is right here. And where you're going is there's a path, and a part of you knows it. It may not know the specific details, but there's a part of you that is the infinite self, and you're good. I got you.
So how do you practically, on a day-to-day basis, like get there? Like,
Yeah. I love that question and hate that question at the same time.
mm,
And hate is not, I don't really mean hate, but I'll tell you that it is the question that is frustrating because so often people frame the question with a word like practical,
how to do it practically, right?
right?
Mm.
Okay, so this is all very, very nice, but how do we, well,
2 o'clock. Put my infinite self.
exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
And here's my question for you.
Mm,
The exercise that we just did of feeling what it feels like in the surviving self, feeling what it feels like in the thriving self, and feeling what it feels like in the infinite self. Was that practical?
yeah,
And tell me why.
because it's something that I can do at any time. Yeah. I guess that's what I was saying before. It's just the reminder, the stopping, like just the awareness that,
Awareness,
yeah.
interrupting.
Mm,
Interrupting is the reframing.
yeah.
It's taking a moment and going, you even said this, stopping yourself and going, wait a minute, wait a minute, wait a minute.
Yeah.
That's the habit talking.
Hmm.
I'm going to restate that from my thriving self or my infinite self. I'm going to let this habit of self doubt just sort of slide off of me like I'm Teflon.
Mm,
Making the work of inner fitness practical means making it conscious in the moment. It's when you see the habit happening, if you stop yourself and go, that's the surviving self talking. You've done, let's see what you have achieved by doing that. You stop, so that is interrupting the habit,
mhm.
because normally the habit would just have you go down the rabbit hole. You know, you see yourself as falling further and further behind, and this habit that makes you lazy or whatever, and you'd be judging yourself. But you said, wait. And so that interrupts. And then you say, okay, I'm going to think about it differently.
Mhm.
So not only do you interrupt and you practice thinking about yourself in the situation more productively. And then you see yourself in this process. Oh my God, look at me. Look at me doing things all brand new. Look at me doing things all brand new, which means you are in the moment, in real time, creating a new relationship with yourself,
Mhm.
with your thoughts, with your ability to observe yourself neutrally and not judging yourself, with the ability to look at yourself and feel not just curiosity, but pride. Look at me doing things all brand new. It is giving yourself, pouring into yourself a way of being that honors you. That's a lot going on
Mm.
by going, wait a minute, wait a
Yeah,
minute. Is that practical?
it's practical.
It's
That
practical.
that is practical.
That's
Yes.
practical.
Mhm.
And you can sit up and see yourself in the dance where you couldn't have seen yourself in the dance in the past. That's practical.
Yeah, like that a lot.
Me too.
Mhm.
Me too.
So, some of the things that came up for me, I was asking, in a few weeks, how far can you get? Like, how far, like, should I have it figured out by now? Um,
So I'm going to ask you a question. I
okay.
love the question, and it's a fair question.
Mhm.
And if you check inside of yourself,
Mhm.
which self is asking that question?
Who's asking that? As surviving.
Yeah.
It's, yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
And what lets you know that it's the surviving self asking the question?
Because it's like just waiting to judge myself.
That's
It's
right.
like
That's right.
doing it, didn't you messed this up.
And even if you're angling for some sort of praise that makes you feel good, you're angling for it from a place of judgment of yourself.
Mm.
So now that we, have yet again turned the work into practical, considerations, ways of stopping and asking yourself questions that impact the moment. I will say to you that I I'm just going to speak mhm, from my vantage point, from my perspective. I'm actually asking myself if maybe you should speak from yours.
Okay.
Um, I'm going to go back to your statement that you're trying to figure your life out.
Yeah.
And every time you've said that, a part of me has chuckled because,
Interesting.
huh?
I
Huh?
said interesting.
Yeah. And here's why. I'm trying today to figure my whole life out.
Good luck.
And if I don't figure out my whole life today, I'm failing.
Yeah, yeah.
And and my life, well, maybe my life is too big for me to figure it all out today. Maybe maybe life is a process. Maybe that's the whole point.
Yeah.
Maybe maybe it's not about figuring my life.
That's lazy wording. That's lazy wording.
it may be lazy wording, and it is the kind of irrational expectation
Mm.
that the surviving self will saddle us with, no matter how ridiculous and irrational or unreasonable it is.
Mhm.
So then you get to judge yourself because you can't figure your life out.
There's no way that can happen. You automatically fail.
Exactly. And I'll tell you one other thing, and we're coming close to time. The other thing is, if you, our whole definition of life might require a reframe. Because if your life, is your job or your mate, okay. But if your life is framed in terms of your gathering the tools to live the next part of the race better,
Mm.
that becomes an interesting way to think about your life. I'm just, I'm just getting ready for the next part.
Mhm.
I'm just
Yeah.
doing I'm doing the strengthening and resiliency work I need for the long haul.
Mhm.
Two completely different energies.
Definitely. Yeah. I'm going to reframe and reword that.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. And so the answer to your question is, to the degree that you have discovered some things that can serve how you think and move forward, is the only measure of
Mm.
whether or not this time that we've spent together has been productive and aligned with your growth and future.
Mm.
Tell me one thing that you feel like you can walk away with that can support you going forward with the issue that you came in with.
Can I tell you two?
Can you tell me the truth?
No,
Is
I
that
said
what?
can I tell you two.
Oh, good. Yes.
And these are just the first two that came to mind. Again today, really taking in how my perception of everything is just, again, it's just been this constant negative feedback loop, and just how that whole experience can feel completely different by, interrupting it and reframing it like we discussed. I mean, that just feels very empowering. And I also know that when I'm operating from that space, that's when things happen. That's when answers come. That's when ideas come. That's when things happen. And so that feels incredibly empowering. I want to say three things now. Okay. One of the other things is just the questioning, just the questions that you kind of fed me previously about how to ask myself and talk to myself, and things have I'm getting answers. I don't have I don't know exactly where I'm going yet, but just even in the past couple of days, I've had some ideas of just some action steps of things that I can do. Like, oh, I want to record a couple of conversations and sessions with a couple of people that I know. And I'm going to start saying yes to when people ask me, would you come speak to my kids about, this? And would you? And I always say no. And I'm realizing people have always asked me, they've always asked me to speak, and I always say no. And I'm going to start saying yes if those
Yes.
opportunities to continue to come. And so I have several things that have come to me just through that questioning of, I don't have it figured out, but I have some steps and some ideas that I know other things will be born out of. And so that's very helpful. And it's just a wonderful tool that you can always use. And then
And who can always use?
what's that? That I can always that I can always use in a variety of ways. And then just the concept of the three selves. I love how you went into depth in the book and about how that came to you. And it's yeah, it's just it's a great framework to understand what I'm going through and what I'm experiencing, and to be able to check in and say who's running the show right now, who's in charge. And that's empowering.
It's beautiful.
So you asked for one, gave you
I love
three.
it. I love it. I thank you so very much. I'm glad that the time that you have spent, that we have spent together was valuable. It added value to your life. That was the whole point. And so I am thrilled with this. And I thank you so much for showing up and sharing yourself with us and, the YouTube community, because we are all in this together. Your questions are the questions of not a few, but of millions. And your ahas are the ahas that are available for millions. And we can all do this together so much better than we have been doing it up until now. And it just requires transparent conversations so that we can, learn some concepts and ways of seeing ourselves that allow us to effectively and practically
Mhm.
interrupt our habit, see our habit, interrupt our habit, and create a new, more empowering habit. So I thank you for helping us change the world.
I cannot thank you enough, Tina. This has been amazing. I appreciate you so much. And
Thank you.
oh,
Nico, thank you. And I expect to see you again. So we shall see. All right.
yes, absolutely. Thank you so much,
You
Tina.
be well. All righty. Bye bye.